Welcome to the Nonac Exchange, where we turn Canyon City around for a fresh perspective on the conversations that matter. From city projects and community programs to the people behind the scenes, this podcast is your connection to the work happening every day to serve our community. Thanks for tuning in. Let's begin the exchange.
I'm Ryan Stevens. I'm the City Administrator for the City of Canyon City, and today we are doing a department spotlight of the Economic Development Department, and we're here with Rick Harrmann, our Economic Development Manager. Rick, you want to tell us a little bit about what you do in economic development? Give us a high-level overview of what that means for the city?
Sure. Economic development's a lot of things in this city. Basically, what we're trying to do is increase quality of life in our community, increase our standard of living in our community. From our perspective, though, departmentally, it's being involved with just about everything. It's infrastructure, it's job retention, it's business retention, it's industry attraction. It's trying to get the retail that we want here. It's trying to get quality of life downtown that we want. It's trying to increase sales tax revenue downtown. It's pretty broad, all-encompassing position.
Yeah.
That covers a lot in the community.
Yeah, and recently, within the last 10 to 15 years, economic development has really encompassed housing also.
Housing is a big one, yeah. That's probably priority number one. At least talking to retailers that are interested in the area, their big thing. Jobs as well, industry as well, Their big thing is housing. Do we have the rooftops to support it? And that's honestly one of the biggest challenges we have. Housing is probably, and it's honestly, when I started this position, it's not anything that I really expected to be the big thing. Other communities have housing authorities or they have housing organizations that kind of work to that. We don't really have that in our community as much. So it really falls on us as economic developers. That would be me and Fremont Economic Development Corporation and the developers that we have working for the community to try to create the housing that we need here. One significant challenge that we have is housing. We've got a couple of projects out there, one of them 4 Mile Ranch, where we picture the opportunity to increase our housing stock, the opportunity to increase our tax base, our population to the point where we can become more self-sufficient as a community. But getting that housing here is the biggest challenge, simply because of our proximity to Colorado Springs.
Yeah, and from a housing standpoint, there's been a lot of developments here in Canyon from many years ago, with Dawson Ranch being the last really big one, and a lot of those lots are, they're starting to be fully built out. 4 Mile Ranch is kind of the next big one that we have in the hopper. There's been a small one, Keystone Ridge, over by Mountain View Core Knowledge and the Harrison School that's currently building itself out. It's much smaller than something like 4 Mile Ranch. What are you seeing from a trend standpoint of where these developments are going, or what does it take to get a development like 4 Mile Ranch off the ground?
Yeah, 4 Mile is a big one. Even the smaller ones, it really takes a lot of promotion of the development. We haven't seen that a lot from 4 Mile in the past, the previous owners of 4 Mile. There are developments in Florence as well that are still trying to be built out. Demographically, we have some challenges that we need to overcome, and that is going to be the income level here. The probably one of the bigger challenges we have on the housing side is that our housing market is relatively old compared to other communities. It's stagnant. It doesn't move very well. And housing developers, when they're looking at a community, they want to see that there's movement in the housing market, and they want to see that there's an increase in rents. Nobody wants to hear about increases in rents and values of property, but that's what triggers the feasibility, or at least the appearance that a project's going to be feasible in the community.
And in Canyon, where we don't have a whole lot of apartment complex, a lot of the rentals are single-family homes. So the data is not necessarily available for these developers to try and figure out what those rents are, so they can put their pro formas together.
Correct. And the rents, some won't like to hear this. The rents stay artificially low because people aren't leaving their apartments. If you don't have that movement in the market, people aren't leaving. Property owners don't feel like they can raise the rents. That gives developers the idea that rents aren't moving, and it's not feasible to build for them here, or likely not feasible. What we have now, though, is in terms of 4 Mile Ranch, we have owners who are very actively promoting our community to outside areas, promoting our community to developers, and attracting the types of development that fit our comprehensive plan, our need as a community.
Yeah.
And that I think will change things entirely. And then also we're trying to do a lot to connect our community to the Front Range. You know, we're 45 miles away from Colorado Springs. We have people working in town that live there. We have people that live here and work there. But there's that disconnect there that developers who build in Colorado Springs don't necessarily see the feasibility here. But now we are looking at developers who are bringing a product that is more amenable to our income levels. And so that'll turn things around. That'll really open up some possibilities. Looking forward to it. What we have to do with 4 Mile, though, is get through our master development agreement process, get through our tax increment financing negotiations, and begin the process of creating the infrastructure that
Right.
doesn't exist right now. And whether it's residential, whether it's commercial, we just don't have the infrastructure that developers want to see.
Yeah, I think that's one of the challenges that we have in town is that a lot of the buildable lots around existing infrastructure, you know, those are being built out, and there's not a lot of new lots left for this development to happen. And that's why a development like 4 Mile Ranch is so important, is because you need to be able to build out that infrastructure and, you know, create unused land that can be developable land for these developers, and, you know, see new housing coming out of the ground. And, you know, as we're talking about housing, you know, we've done housing needs assessments, we've done housing demand analysis, and what those reports are showing is that Canyon City needs housing across the entire spectrum of
Correct.
housing. Do you mind talking a little bit about what the spectrum is, and
Yeah.
everything from entry level to mid market and so on?
Yeah, you know, housing is such a diverse topic. People tend to think of housing as affordable housing, or, you know, in our market, in our state, it always seems like it's affordable or unaffordable. There's nothing that fits that attainable. One of the terms is missing middle.
Right.
That doesn't exist in our community, and it's getting harder to build missing middle because of legislation, liability issues with developers. But the market we have here is not moving. So typically you've got young families, young couple with children who are looking, well, historically anyway, who are looking for their first home. They will look at a house that was maybe slightly renovated by a senior citizen who moved out, or a family that moved on to a larger home. Previous family gets a raise, or they get a job promotion, they move on to a new house. It opens up that property for a new first-time home buyer. That doesn't really happen very well in our community, simply because we're not seeing the housing market move. We're not seeing the seniors move out. They don't have options or attainable options that they really see that they can move
Right.
into.
Something to downsize.
Something to downsize. You'll always have seniors that want to stay in their house forever. I probably will be one of those. But the market itself depends on that movement. So we've identified in the demand analysis that, yeah, we need affordable, but that's not really the principal need, because when you evaluate the movement of people, the migration of people in and out of the community, we see that we are losing a demographic of our population that is considered income earners, like higher income earners. They're moving to other communities, whether that's because job opportunities are there, or their kids graduated from high school and they want to move on where their kids are. We're losing those people who can afford to move up to new housing, but they're moving to higher end communities. Or the people that are coming here to work throughout the day are coming here during the day from higher cost of living areas. So those, let's say it's 2,000 people coming to the community to work, they could live here at a lower cost of living than they are in Colorado Springs. We just haven't made that connection to filling that need here for probably other reasons, maybe amenities, shopping opportunities. But the market itself really does very well on the higher end. Our higher end homes are selling. Lower end homes, we don't have enough of them. And if they do become available, they tend to be seen as too costly for that first time home buyer, because they're gonna have to put something into it.
Right.
Which means the market is moving towards smaller, more affordable types of homes. But the whole market here really is more of a need for across the board market rate, not just affordable housing.
Right. And when you say that there's 2,000 people coming to Canyon City to work, that's not just a shot in the dark. That's a number that it's an estimate, but we have a pretty strong idea that's roughly the number of people that commute in.
Yeah, we think it's around that. We think it's probably about, and I don't remember the percentages, but it was a significant number from the correction system coming into town. And we've met with I and Rob Brown at FEDC met with the chief HR officer of the prison system to talk about housing, and there's a significant number that move in. And 57 to 59% of the people that live in Fremont County work outside of Fremont County. Now, it's going to be a lot of people on the western part of the county, in the Salida area, that are going to work in Salida, BV. But we also have a number of people here that will work in the gold mine or travel to Colorado Springs, Pueblo to work. So it's a very interesting migration of people that, to some extent, demographically, economically doesn't make sense, but that's where we are. We do have a lot of people driving in to the community to work every day. And we'd like them to live here.
Absolutely.
If we can.
Yeah.
But it's a challenge. It's a challenge. And a lot of that too is, the amenities. Economic development is also trying to create the amenities that people want in a community. We've got a beautiful downtown. We've got that people are still recognizing around the state. I mean, it's amazing how many people don't realize it's there, because we have US 50 one block away. We have a beautiful downtown that draws people. The tendency, and these are conversations with our larger employers, is that we need more industry. We need more primary jobs. We need more opportunities for, let's say somebody comes here and gets a job with the school system or the hospital, and their trailing partner or spouse can't find a job, or that then becomes a deterrent from them moving here. So it's a challenge to get all those amenities, the whole picture of economic development going in the same direction.
Yeah.
It's a big job.
It is. You just mentioned primary jobs, and do you mind explaining what a primary job is versus other types of jobs?
Yeah, I was just in a meeting this morning. We were talking about that too. It's primary job. So a lot of what we are used to typically in our community is we've got a lot of smaller businesses in our community that drive a lot of our economic success. And they're extremely important to our community. But the tendency is that local people will buy from local businesses. Local people will get a job at a local business, keeps all of the income, all the revenue inside of our community. Primary jobs and primary industry are those jobs that are working for industry that pull money from outside the area and bring it into our community. We're seeing a significant increase, or beginning to see a significant increase in primary industry in our community with like Legacy Metal Products and Dreamwood Homes and Estes Energetics. We've got other companies, Neuravity, that's looking at coming to our community. These businesses will be located in our community. Barnell is another one. Barnell Precision Agriculture.
Yeah, you've got Interroll, Amrise, which used to be Wholesome.
Yep.
I mean, all of these are examples of primary jobs where they create it here, they employ people here, and they're selling their product, exporting it out, and importing that
Correct.
revenue into our community.
Yes, that's what primary is all about. It's bringing revenue into our community from outside. And a lot of times that works in the form of wages, which really benefits our community, but it also works in the form of industry connectivity through regionalism. I talk a lot about supply chain and how we as a community should be fitting better into a supply chain on the Front Range. Once you start to make those connections, these primary industries lead then into sub companies or subcontractors who then supply that, who then possibly attract business from outside the area into our area because they want to be closer to that manufacturer. So it's a total movement of a market that provides a lot of wealth in our community. It provides a lot of revenue generation, income generation, and then it's also relatively new in the last 10 years or so is the location neutral employment concept or remote work concept. We've got companies like Pax8 who have rural offices, and they staff a number of people in our community that are really housed here but work out of Denver
Sure.
or work out of the West Coast or East Coast. That's another thing that brings significant income into the area, spendable, discretionary income into the area. So it's a pretty broad concept.
Yeah, you have remote workers that work for Google and Amazon and all of these big companies that you hear about on the news or on TV. You see their advertisements. There's a lot of people that work locally in those tech fields, and they work remotely, and they work right here in Canyon City.
And they start their own businesses. There's a number of businesses that are new startups that are coming out of people who were with IBM and Silicon Valley. There's agriculture, farming is creating new industry now in our community, tech industry in our community. So yeah, they don't just bring their job, they bring their ideas as well. And it's evolving into a lot of recognition for our community because that tech growth and that entrepreneurism growth it's recognized around the country really for what's happening here.
Yeah, we worked with Fremont Economic Development Corporation and on their Tech Start initiative and trying to attract more of those location neutral professionals here. We really leaned into it with the Visionary Broadband project, trying to get high-speed fiber to this community and hopefully our neighbors in Florence and everywhere else here in Fremont County. Anything you want to add regarding that?
Well, the connectivity is critical. Well, before we started the fiber project, that was a big thing. And infrastructure in a community like ours is critical too. A rural community is tougher to get reliable infrastructure. And when you have power outage and nobody can use the internet or nobody can
swipe a credit card,
then you've got to find that one ATM machine out there that's working. The tech industry that we had growing in our community really needed that fiber connectivity. So being able to create that broadband system, that fiber system, I think is really what is driving a lot of that capability in our community. For a little more background on that, we started the project. So we've got now the fiber project that created a redundant loop that is pretty much a municipal kind of a loop that connects our community, all the critical services in our community to the county. We initially tried to include Florence in that. It didn't work for other reasons, other municipal reasons, we'll say. But now that we have the system built out here and it's branching out into the neighborhoods and branching out into our businesses, Visionary is now expanding that into Florence to include all of that area to create the redundancy there too. From a regional perspective, we can operate as an isolated rural community in an economy, in a world like this, in a tech-centered world like this. Having that fiber connectivity is probably just as valuable as having that power connectivity or water connectivity.
Absolutely.
So it's critical infrastructure, and thankfully we were really able to hit that at probably just the right time
Yeah.
to help grow the industry we need in our area. So it was a good project. And
Yeah, I think the importance of location neutral jobs is you don't need a big smokestack to try and bring 100 people here. You can distribute those people throughout the entire community, and it doesn't feel as impactful when you bring a smokestack or something like that to the community. Canyon City, from a zoning standpoint, we don't have a whole lot of places to put industrial type of jobs, and even our commercial districts are pretty limited. I think that's one of the things that's interesting about the 4 Mile Ranch project is it's a planned development district. It has plans for business parks or tech flex space types of developments, but other than that, we're really looking at potential development out towards the airport and areas outside of Fremont County, or not Fremont County, but outside of Canyon City in Fremont County. It kind of goes back to what you're saying, is that economic development is really more of a regional game. Businesses that are coming in, they don't necessarily care where the city limit is. They want to, they're looking for workforce, and workforce doesn't really play by those same rules. So it really is a regional effort between the city, the county, Florence, Fremont Economic Development Corporation. Everybody has to be working together to really make this happen, and making sure that we're all rowing in the same direction.
it's exactly right. And I guess I'm a Midwesterner, and I have I guess we'll call it good fortune of having been involved with a huge supply chain out there. The entire Midwest is a region, operates as a region. And the state of Colorado hasn't really embraced that concept. Colorado Springs is driving a lot of that. My perspective is very much connectivity to supply chain, so connectivity to Colorado Springs. The same with the emerging campus in Florence. They are connecting to Pueblo and Trinidad and Colorado Springs. We can't operate in isolation, because really that becomes very much territorial, which is protectionist to some extent. And I'm realizing I'm getting off onto a little bit of a political tangent, but geographically it also becomes a problem if you isolate yourself. So efforts like Southern Colorado Startup Week, we had 2 of them a few years ago. That was an effort between Colorado Springs and Pueblo and Emerging Campus and us. And there's going to be a new one now coming out that will be in August, later August. There will be a new SoCo Startup Week. That's going to be more accelerator-oriented planning, like Exponential Impact and Catalyst Campus and Emerging Campus are coming together to create something which in and of itself is a good thing, because the first Southern Colorado Startup Weeks, there wasn't really a lot of cooperation between the accelerators. But really those accelerators need to work together as well. So the concept of regionalism is key to me. I know it's a little bit more of a foreign concept to Canyon City historically, and even local rivalries between Canyon City and Florence. On the industry side of things, we're all one organization, we're all one community. So what benefits us benefits Florence. What benefits Florence, same with Penrose. We're all in that market. But to your point about not having the infrastructure locally, I spend a lot of time promoting land possibilities, development possibilities out by the airport, Penrose area, because that's where the land is. The infrastructure isn't necessarily out there perfectly. But that's where the industry infrastructure fits the most, in proximity to the airport. On your comment about 4 Mile Ranch, that has a very unique capability to draw for us what we consider to address what we consider leakage. And leakage really refers to the dollars in our wallet going to other communities when we have to buy furniture, or we have to buy clothing or shoes, or things that our community just doesn't have a lot of, or it has a certain level of quality, and people want to get a higher level of quality,
Yeah,
so they shop somewhere else.
yeah, so you're talking retail leakage, right?
Retail
Yeah,
leakage,
so
yeah.
when people take a trip to Colorado Springs and maybe they're going to a doctor's appointment or a concert or a movie or something like that, and they go and they eat out or they go and shop while they're there.
Yep.
That's all dollars that are leaving our community. So our community, that if you think about it as a revenue bucket, it's always leaking. You're losing money to other
Correct.
communities, right?
Yep. Yeah, and we do lose a lot also. I mentioned that 57 to 59% of the people in our county that work outside of our county, they also tend to shop outside of our county.
Sure.
Of course, online shopping is huge everywhere. Thankfully now at least the municipality can benefit from the sales tax of that, but it's still money leaving our community to retail outside the area. 4 Mile has the opportunity to help us create a retail market area that we don't have the land to create right now.
Yeah, I think when you look at something like Harbor Freight, right? They analyze their sales at other stores, and when they were doing that, they realized that Canyon City, people from Canyon City are shopping in either Pueblo or Colorado Springs at our stores. Maybe it makes sense for us to put one in Canyon City.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about how, when retail site selectors are selecting sites here in Canyon City, that is, that's a market condition. That's not the city going out and, investing in Harbor Freight to locate here. That's something that's done with private dollars.
Yeah, it's done with private dollars. It's a very tricky game. A lot of that right now also depends on the cost of constructing these locations. A lot of times the retailers don't build their own sites. They will lease a place that a developer builds. That developer is going to go into a community that has the cost structure to allow them to charge the types of leases that they need to make the development feasible. So they come to our community and they see, and that there's so many factors that come into play with that.
Mm-hmm.
There's the income within a certain driving distance of that certain site.
Yeah, the market area.
The market
right?
area. There's a number of rooftops. How many rooftops are within driving distance of this retail location? How many comparable businesses? In other words, let's say, for example, Natural Grocers loves to be by a drugstore, a Walgreens or CVS or something like that. A lot of their stores are going to be right next to a comparable one or a complementary retailer, because they know people are going to go stop there, and they're going to stop there, and they're going to stop there. If we don't have that synergistic effect in retail in a certain site, they'll choose not to go there. A good example, we tend to think of this community as a small community. I was talking to a retailer about land near Home Depot, but they wanted to be closer to the shopping centers by City Market and Safeway. And I said, well, you're talking about a mile away or a mile and a half away.
Right.
And the broker's comment to me is that that's a long mile and a half in your community, because they were just too far away. We have the leakage coming from people, getting back on the leakage part of it, sorry, people leaving our community. The challenge we have with people coming into the community is that a lot of those jobs are on the outskirts of town, not near the shopping center. So they'll come into the work and they'll drive right back out of town. We tried to attract retailers into that area also, but again, they were too far from rooftops, too far from the synergy they wanted in our central, not central business district, but in our central commercial area.
Yeah, that goes to buyer psychology, right? When somebody's out shopping at the grocery store, it kind of goes back to your comment about Natural Grocers being next to Walgreens. People are going to go through progression. They go to the grocery store, they stop at the pharmacy. They're when people plan their shopping trips, they're planning for these like things, and the buyer psychology of it is, you want to be very close together
Mm-hmm.
and make that trip as short as possible and not running across town, even if it's only a mile and a half.
Yeah, and there's a lot of talk about, to address the retail side of things, why don't we get this retailer? Why don't we get this retailer? Why don't we get a shoe store? Why don't we get the process of attracting retail is us asking a retailer to evaluate our community. By and large, if the demographics aren't there, if the income levels aren't there, if the numbers they need to develop feasibly aren't here, they won't entertain it. We've got a number of retailers that are interested, but our community is just on that bubble. We talk about also, and this is a part that I know community members get frustrated about when you start to think about coffee shops and tire shops and gas stations. There is a certain order to retail. There's a certain order to the market that all communities go through. And by and large, ours is considered a transit community. And until we become more of a transit community, so those developments, those coffee shops, those tire shops begin to make other retailers watch the market. Mm-hmm. And then they watch very closely, and they look very closely at certain sites. There's a sandwich shop that was interested in our community, and they were looking at 3 different locations that were all within a half a mile of each other, and they kept going back to that one location because of the synergy with the rest of that area around it, but they couldn't make that deal work. It's not us going to them necessarily, and we do try to target retail. There's retailers we'd love to get here.
Yeah, going back to that retail leakage, right? So
back to the retail leakage.
Targeting the stuff that we know
Yes.
people are leaving the community for.
But when the market is doing what the market does, and certain industries, certain subsectors of the market are generating more revenue than others, and they're paying better ground leases than others, the developers are going to promote locations to those types of businesses. And then it comes to a matter of the broker working with the property owner before we even generally even know about it, working with the property owner and saying, we want to develop on your property. And then they get into a contract, put the property under contract, then they start their due diligence process to determine whether they can work it here or not. By us going to them and saying, we don't want a grocery store, we don't want a coffee shop, we don't want a gas station, then we, who are accused of being not business friendly, are telling a property owner that you can't sell your property
Right.
to a buyer who has the opportunity to clear you from your property. So, our philosophy from an economic development and growth perspective is the market's going to do what the market's going to do. We can try to steer it. We can possibly work with planning and zoning codes to help determine what goes there, but we can't and won't step in between a buyer and a seller and say, you can't buy this property or you can't sell this property.
Yeah, and we really can't, because from a zoning standpoint, it may be a use by rights.
Yes.
So that property owner and that user have a right to do that under the code.
Yes.
And that's what they're evaluating. They're evaluating whether or not this market will be successful for their concept. And oftentimes, when you see a concentration of certain types of businesses, that actually attracts more of that type of business.
Yes, it does. It attracts more of that type of business. And I mentioned before, a shoe store. There was a shoe store that we actively recruited. I talked to them at a conference in Utah. I spoke with them in Denver, spoke with them in Vegas when I was there. They came to our community. The broker was working for a shoe store and another sporting goods store. They were seriously interested in our community. But now the challenge is they needed to enter into a lease that they could afford. But when in our community right now, and our community is very low, overall a very low per square footage lease rate, we're still considered a more affordable community for retail. It's changing. As property changes hands, costs go up. But they could not establish a lease rate that they wanted, which was closer to like $7 a square foot. Property owner couldn't make money at that level, and they could not come to an agreement on a lease rate that would be feasible for the store and feasible for the property owner. So that ended up not happening. And that's really what we're running into a lot, is that the cost of doing business, not just developing, but the cost of doing business for retailers also is going up. And they need to enter into more favorable lease rates, which makes it very difficult for our property owners to make a go of it. And it just doesn't work. It's costly to have a building sit vacant, but it's more costly to enter into a lease agreement. That's going to cost the property owner money to do improvements. A lot of times property owner needs to do some improvements. And it makes it very, very difficult for us to attract the type of retail that we need. Biggest challenge, of course, is infrastructure. But that's another thing that makes it very difficult for us to get the retail that we want. To address, I haven't heard Chick-fil-A in a while, but Chick-fil-A is one of those businesses that requires about 100,000 people in the area, and they can demand the lease rates they want, but they also create a lot of traffic problems around their locations.
Absolutely. I think that's important for the public to understand, is a lot of these concepts, especially the big franchises, they have a formula that they follow. They're looking for number of people, socioeconomics, all the demographic features, and then they're looking for the property. And all of those things have to align. And if they don't align, then they will move on to the next community.
Yeah, and I haven't brought this up yet, but one of the larger challenges we have, I mentioned our proximity to Colorado Springs and Pueblo. We compete with those communities also for retail and development. I've been in conversations where I was told that we know you're coming to our community. We know your people are coming to Colorado Springs to shop. So why would I develop there? It's kind of the counter of what you said before. So they know that we are driving there to shop. So since we are competing with those markets that have higher populations, that have higher income, family incomes, disposable income, it makes it much more difficult for us to get those retailers here. There are markets, there are businesses that are attracted more to our kind of a community, but we already have a few of those businesses here.
Auto parts,
tire
stores.
Auto parts, tire stores. Things like, Tractor Supply is one, Big R is one. They do really well in smaller markets. But we also have a Home Depot. So once you start to get that many, it becomes too many for other retailers to look at. It's getting those other businesses like the clothing and the home goods. We've got Classic Furniture downtown, which thankfully we have a furniture store in town. There used to be 4 in Canyon City at one point. But the home goods and other products that we go elsewhere to shop, it's very difficult to get those. We do have interest. We do have interest from retailers. The challenge is a lot of them right now want to have an empty building to move into, and we don't have anything big enough for those types of businesses. So, I could ramble on about retail for a long time because it's a tough nut to crack. It really is. But really, we need to raise our population. We need to raise our income levels. We need to, I guess we'll just call it as increase our tax base, because then you start to show the retailers that you've got the demographics they need to support their revenue generation.
So that really kind of takes us back to the beginning of this conversation, where it's housing and primary jobs. Those are the things that help improve the tax base, and you need both of those things to happen. And it becomes more of a kind of a chicken and an egg thing. And we've had this debate back and forth before, and it's really not chicken and egg. It's really both need to happen, almost simultaneously.
Yeah, it does, and the bigger challenge we have, and I keep going back to infrastructure, we are recovering from 60, probably 60 plus years of stagnant economy. And I say stagnant, it wasn't stagnant all along, but we were historically a railroad town. We were a very viable and key distributor of agriculture, of product, goods and services to the state. Little history lesson here, that the state was created primarily through obviously people coming out, discovering the West, and then the railroad found a way through the area. There were two major lines. One went through Denver, went through Pueblo and Canyon City. And then the line that went through Canyon City met up with the line that went through Denver west of our area, but our line served all of the areas south of the Arkansas River. So Canyon City, Pueblo were very key distribution points for all of that area. Eventually, the automobile took precedent. Trucks took precedent over rail. The railroad got shut down. Passenger rail got shut down in '68. I-25 was put in 1961, finished between Pueblo and Colorado Springs. That really started to change the commercial corridor, the state level corridor, from our transit line to the I-25 interstate corridor. And that began a very slow decline of jobs and very slow decline of people from our community to the Front Range. And a lot of focus, similar to city, when we put infrastructure somewhere, we want that infrastructure to pay for itself somehow if we possibly can. The same with the state. When you put infrastructure in I-25, you're going to try to promote I-25 as a commercial corridor. And that separated us from that corridor. So that left us with 60 years of slow decline. We've never really seen that straight loss of revenue, but then you increase the cost of infrastructure over those years and you basically have a decline. That left us having the need as a community to go to taxpayers to pay for road maintenance, the 2A project. So we are trying to recover from the infrastructure needs of the past, while we also need to have infrastructure, new infrastructure.
To attract the new businesses.
To attract the new businesses. So that chicken and an egg is hugely difficult when you're trying to recover from 60 years of economic challenges in order to provide for the future growth of the area. It all has to happen through the private sector, really. I mean, we've done, honestly, I think from a municipal perspective, and granted, there's a lot of social media out there about the city spending money on infrastructure. This is all very strategic infrastructure. It's infrastructure tied to very strategic plans to create, partially through 2A, to repair a lot of the streets. And that takes a long time to do. But in order to attract the people we need in this community, and we do need the growth, in order to attract the people we need in this community, we need to create the kind of place that they want to be. We need to create the kind of place that transitions our community from former riverfront industrial to riverfront recreation, downtown connectivity, downtown beautification, placemaking for that, because then that starts to attract the investors who come to see our downtown and work on our projects that we need to move forward. Good example of that, and this was a little bit more of happenstance actually, but the Hotel St. Cloud is a great example of that. The owners of the hotel came in from Denver. They bought a building at auction. They really had no idea what this community was about, but they came into a community that they completely fell in love with.
Yeah.
The feel of the place, the vibrancy at the time was a little less than now, but it was just a good feel, and 1 block off of US 50. That then evolved into the hotel being a catalyst project, and more activity downtown. And
It's
then
becoming an anchor, right?
it's becoming an anchor. It's definitely an anchor.
And when you're talking retail, an anchor is a good thing.
An anchor is a good thing, yeah. And that then also, a little bit more backstory on 4 Mile Ranch, the new ownership took over 3 years ago, 3+ years ago. One of the investment groups that invested in 4 Mile Ranch was here to see the community, and they were downtown, and I was meeting with the principal, one of the principal investors in that group, and he totally fell in love with our downtown and what we as a community were trying to create. And that prompted them to invest in 4 Mile Ranch. So all of those pieces, the placemaking that's going into the riverfront, into connectivity to the riverfront, going, even crossing US 50. Love or hate the medians, it's a way to get people across US 50 safely, to get them downtown, between downtown and the river. All of those feed into then this other project, which feeds into this other project, which feeds into this other project. And we're at a very critical point right now, I would say, on the 4 Mile Ranch development, that a couple of decisions made, and they already have developers interested in developing housing there. We are getting very close to stabilizing what right now feels like a very turbulent economy. And I know there's a lot that feeds into the economy, and probably stuff we don't want to get into in this conversation, but all of those placemaking pieces, infrastructure pieces, tie into helping us incentivize and create the awareness to enable the private sector to come in and do what the private sector has to do. So there's definite reasons for all of those plans and the infrastructure that's taking place here now. You know, when you think about what we just did on relatively controversial, 100 through 400, 1st through 4th Street, Main Street renovations, we now have 4 buildings on the 300 block that have gone through improvements, facade improvements, interior improvements. We've also, this one kind of flies below the radar when you think about infrastructure. Main Street, our historic buildings are critical infrastructure. We've achieved about $1 million+ in facade improvements, building systems improvement, fire safety improvements through our urban renewal grant programs that were matched with $580,000 of grants. Mm-hmm. That's huge improvement to our downtown that didn't exist. And then you think about the $20 million that was the Hotel St. Cloud development that was initially supposed to be $9 million. And the Fremont County National Bank building improvements, the millions that went into that, and the Valleywide improvements that went into that, all of that is watched by investors and people outside the area just looking at the area. Yeah, it shows very well, and our downtown is beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. So, and kudos to everybody making it that way.
Absolutely, I think it's great effort, and really appreciate the people who come in and invest, and the people who are here and that are investing, and all the work they're doing for our community, both downtown and across the city.
It's critical. They need the recognition, and a lot of that 300 block too. And another controversial topic, the Clock Tower Plaza. Clock Tower Plaza is a project that we've been working on for probably close to 3 years now. City's owned the property since 2019, I think, something like that. But that is a key component to people come out of the Centennial Park parking lot largely because they go there largely to ride the train. Another great asset in our community. Trying to make the pedestrian connectivity between the river and downtown, Clock Tower becomes that key location, that attraction spot for people walking from the river, sit down, begin to see what downtown is all about.
Right.
Enjoy a little initially it was designed as shaded space, maybe enjoy some entertainment, enjoy the beautiful clock. And then that connects to Main Street and creates this vibrancy between downtown, clock tower, 300, 200 block, 400 block. It really fills out our downtown to an extent that it hadn't been, or has the potential to do that to an extent that it hadn't been before. So what city council will do with it, we'll see where that goes. But that, from a planning perspective, that's kind of the picture of Clock Tower. It was designed as a connectivity thing for people coming out of the train, people coming out of Centennial Park, coming off the trails. I'm a biker, so I ride the trails all the time, and I'm constantly connecting the trails up there to down there to up there. It's a really cool opportunity here. So, we'll see where that goes, but that was another one of those placemaking pieces that has yet to be determined. But, new councils have new ideas and new communities have new ideas, so we'll see where that goes.
I think we're just about at time. Anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
Oh, one thing that I see a lot, there's always been talk about, use this how you want. Canyon City is difficult to work with. There's a story that I think people need to hear, is that everybody in this community, similar to Royal Gorge River Initiative organization, did some training in the community. Everybody, all the rafting companies, all the river companies promote our downtown. They tried to help businesses downtown understand the impact of tourism and, get a little bit of a better sense of how people downtown can help tourism as well. Everybody that is in our community, whether you're a citizen, whether you're a server, whether you're a bartender, whether you're a chef, whether you're a bookstore owner, a retailer, everybody is in the business of economic development. Everybody has the opportunity to say, without even knowing it, to promote our community to a retail broker or a developer. It happens all the time. They are here without us knowing it.
They're sitting at the table next to you at the restaurant.
Sitting at the table next to you at the restaurant. I was working with a retail recruiter for a few years, was in a conversation with a retailer that about a retailer that we were trying to target here. We were recruiting. Their broker came to visit our community. They were sitting in a local restaurant. They overheard people at the table next to them, literally, talking about the city, that they don't want people, it's hard to work with the city. And they decided they had no interest in developing here. They were seriously interested in our community, but that conversation prevented them from coming here. Now, you could argue that the city can be difficult to deal with. I go to conferences around the country. I go to conferences in Denver. All municipalities have codes. All municipalities are considered the bad guy. That's not uncommon. So when the retailers, when the brokers, when the developers are really interested in the community, they don't look at that first. They look at the demographics first. They look at the possibility of creating a feasible project. But in this case, that was enough to make that developer say no. And that's really because we are not right now seen as a higher risk community for development than others are, simply because of that demographics. We need to raise our tax base, grow our population, raise our income levels, which requires primary jobs, which, so.
Yeah, I think I've heard you say this before, but we're kind of considered a bubble community or a tweener, right? We're in between, so when retailers and developers are looking at Canyon City versus another community, they have to decide where they're going to invest their dollars.
Yep.
And those little differences are the things that can break that tie.
Yeah, those little expenses or those little bits of risk can break that tie. Yeah, there's a real estate broker I meet with in Denver periodically who loves our community. He keeps looking at this, a couple of them. They keep looking at it, Right now, we are in a social media funk, I would say. I don't know how we'll use this in a podcast, but we're in a social media funk, and I can't speak louder than that narrative out there. And that narrative gets out way beyond our borders, and people watch that. We're at a point right now. I mean, you and I were talking about 4 Mile Ranch and the potential housing developments they have there. Those types of conversations can certainly cause problems with those developments in the future.
Yeah.
So I can't say that, and I won't say that people shouldn't say what they want. I believe in freedom of speech, but actions have consequences, and sometimes they're unexpected. And a lot of times people don't realize that one little comment will stop somebody. Another one, for another real one, there was a developer, not a developer, there was a retailer interested in our community. He was looking at a building. The broker, the local commercial broker he was working with, said, you probably don't want to do this in Canyon City. He was looking at the building. He had a specific location he was interested in. He had that conversation with his broker, and he called me and he said, "What's up with this?" Came and looked at the building. Didn't quite work out feasibly the way he wanted it to, but that really set the tone for his perspective coming to our community. And I was on the phone for a half an hour with him. I was at a conference actually on the phone for a half an hour with him, trying to get him to come and see it. Let's talk. Let's look at the building. We will meet with you. We will bring in the fire district. We will bring in the building department. We will bring in everybody we need to. But that really set a tone that is really hard for me to overcome. So, everybody out there is an economic developer, whether they realize it or not. The tone that we carry in the community carries very far, and it's hard to overcome that.
It really is.
Yeah. And that works for, I'm not throwing FEDC into this, but works for them too. I mean, they have to speak louder than this narrative as well, and they are working very hard at that as well. They're doing a great job. I mean, they're looking at some really good businesses coming to our community. So, whatever we can do as a community to help with that, great. Yeah. Let's do it. So, happy to help. And I'm also, from my perspective, if anybody wants to have a conversation with me about economic development, I'll sit down and chat with you for an hour. We can meet somewhere else. We can meet here. Whatever you want to do. Here to help.
Great. Appreciate it, Rick. That was our department spotlight with the Economic Development Department.
Thank you.
Here's what's coming up around Canyon City. On August 1st, celebrate Colorado Day at Boots, Brands, and Beginnings from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the Royal Gorge Regional Museum located at 612 Royal Gorge Boulevard. August 3rd is the regular City Council meeting at 6 p.m. in City Council Chambers at City Hall, followed by Coffee with the Mayor on August 4th at the Fremont Center for the Arts. On August 11th, learn about the 3rd Street Connector Project at an open house from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. at City Hall. On August 12th and 13th, don't miss Advancing Canyon City, the Economic Development Summit at the Skyline Theater. We hope to see you there.